Hi everybody, thank you for joining me today. In this video we're going to explore drawing with colored pencils, and I'm going to kind of take you through some of the different types of pencils, some of the papers to use, and some of the tips and tricks that you might be interested in or need if you're going to approach the colored pencil art. There's a wide variety of things that you can do with this. So go ahead, get comfortable. Let's go ahead and get started and have some fun. Let's start off by talking about the 4 P's of drawing with colored pencils. This is what I call the 4 P's. You've got the pencils that you use. We're going to go over the details on that. The paper you use, how much pressure you apply, and last but not least is to have patience in doing something like this. So let's start off with pencils, okay? First of all, you've got a variety of pencils that you can purchase. Everything from Faber-Castell, we've got Prismacolor. You can see this on here, Prismacolor. I don't have the original tin for that one. We've got Crayola brand that you might be able to buy at Walmart, or just this is Blick Studio. I had Crayola here somewhere. Crayola brand. So all of these are good pencils, but it just depends on what you want to do with them. And what a colored pencil is, it's a pigment that has been, a binder is holding it together into a pencil form. And you kind of want to know what kind of binder do you have. Now with Faber-Castell, you've got oil. It's an oil binder. This is a very nice pencil. And it's an oil binder, and one thing that's good about it is that it holds a point nicely. It doesn't break quite as easily. It's a little more expensive than the Prismacolor, but it's still doable. I mean, you can buy them in a set like I did here, or you can buy individual colors. And I'm going to show you what these do in a little bit. All Prismacolor pencils have a wax binder. So you've got wax-based, you've got oil-based. Sometimes with the wax-based pencils, although I use Prismacolor a lot, but sometimes they will not keep a point as well, and they will end up breaking when you try to sharpen them. You've also got, let's see what else we have here. I've got so many colored pencils, it's not even funny. I'll show you some of the different. Here's one, colorations, and I know that was just something from Michael's or Walmart, something like that. So when you use colored pencils, you're going to do lots of layering. You're going to build layers. That's how you're going to build your colors. And if you were going to just say, well, I just want a colored pencil that I can color in a flat color. Maybe, for instance, the Crayola brand, when my kids were in school, they needed to cut something to color a map. They needed a red pencil that they could make a mark with. But they weren't trying to get a technique of layering and maybe some kind of realistic drawing. So that's just something to consider. Another thing is, and I don't know if you'll be able to find these. I have a hard time finding these. This is something called art sticks, and they are really just Prismacolor in a stick form. So instead of a thin lead, it's just the stick form. And these are really nice for laying in large areas of color, but they act the same as the wax-based Prismacolor pencils. I think the company has quit making these now, but if you ever find any, they're a good investment. I really like those. The other pencil, which is really not the same as a colored pencil, but I'll mention it anyway, is your Derwent. I've got some Derwent watercolor pencils. These will be wonderful if you're using a watercolor, you want to add some color to your drawing and you add a little water to it to blend it. But as far as layering and putting multiple layers for a colored pencil drawing, these probably aren't the best. Only if you want to use them with watercolor. What's next on our list? We've got paper. The type of paper you use can make a big, big difference with your drawings. Let me just show you some options here. We have, let me turn this over. We've got Bristol. Bristol is a smooth surface. You can see on here it has got a smooth surface and it doesn't have much of a tooth to it. So it allows for some very nice blending. Okay, and you can see on this Bristol paper, I did a little sample of the Faber-Castell, the Prismacolor, the Crayola brand, and the Derwent, which I probably shouldn't have put that on there because we're not going to be using that one this time. But you can see the difference how with Crayola, remember I was saying they have colors, but there's not as much pigment. It's not as intense of a color saturation in the pencil, whereas Prismacolor, Faber-Castell, they have a very nice pigment load. But anyway, Bristol paper is one you could use. It's got a slick surface. It's kind of like a cardstock, so it will hold up to lots of layering. But by the same token, because it doesn't have a tooth, sometimes you run out of something to grab onto the pencil, and so you can't do a lot of layering with it. But this is still a good paper. The other one is, let me find a Strathmore just drawing paper. This is a nice paper. It's got a little, it's not super rough, not super thick, not super thin, kind of medium, but it's got a tooth to it. And if you look closely here, you can see I did the same thing with the Prismacolor, Faber-Castell. Because it's got a little bit of tooth to it, you can see some of the grain. It's a little grainier, but that's an option for paper. Another option, well, here was another, mixed media was another one that was a little, it's kind of like a Bristol, but it has a little more tooth to it. You could use something like that. Then here's some other options. Stonehenge is a good paper. I just had some scraps of Stonehenge and I did some colors on there, a little color scale. The other is My Tints, and this is a paper that it will come in colors. Let me see here. This is just kind of a light gray color. But if you can see on here, I don't know if you can see that, a little bit more of a texture and a tooth on this side and a little smoother on this side. One good thing that's kind of neat about the My Tints is if you're going to paint, if you want to draw something starting with a mid-tone, like maybe, and I'll show you in a little bit how if I have my highlights on my drawing and I want to take my white colored pencils, I can actually draw those in and see it on this color paper. I can sketch it in and be able to see it. On the white paper, I can't do that. I have to sketch it in with a little bit of a graphite pencil, making sure it's very light. But this is kind of a neat thing to use, that you can use with the colored pencil. And then the other thing with, I mentioned Stonehenge. Here was a white, or an off-white Stonehenge. Stonehenge is really a printmaking paper, and it's all cotton. It's very nice. It's comes in colors. So here's one. You could get Stonehenge in a light color or a medium tone and then draw on that. So all of these are good choices. I'm going to show you how the pencils react to some of these. In regards to the paper texture or tooth, I'm going to show you a little demonstration. Most people think of a piece of paper that it just being flat like this, but actually paper has a roughness to it. It has a texture to it. And if you looked at a side view, you're going to see these dips and crevices and fibers in the paper. What I'm using here is the Strathmore 400 series that I had shown you earlier. And it's got a texture. It has a texture to it. So if I take my pencil and I just rub it along the side here, you can see that texture. Make sure you can see that. To burnish something or to press down on it, you're flattening the fibers. And the white paper is not showing. You're flattening those fibers. So when I talk about going in and burnishing something, I can do that with pencils, with colors, overlapping colors if I want to. I can come in with a blender pencil and continue flattening areas. There's different ways of doing that. I can come in with this blending stump, and I'm actually pressing, and you can just tell it's blending and it's flattening the fibers. So that's something I wanted to show you about texture. Now, when I went through, and I had said earlier I didn't have a blending pencil for the Faber-Castell, a clear blending pencil. This is oil-based, and so blending with oil-based pencils, I don't think they make a pencil that's a clear blending pencil. They do for Faber-Castell. So with the they don't with Faber-Castell. They do with Prismacolor. Prismacolor, remember, is wax-based. And so you can buy a pencil that is wax-based that will actually press on this, and it will pull the colors together and blend them. With oil-based pencils, you probably need to use the burnishing technique like I was showing you with the cloth or with the blending stump, or you need to use the paintbrush and a little bit of Gamsol or alcohol, and that will help blend those things together. Our next P, which is pressure. We're going to do some exercises where I want you to practice putting pressure on your pencil. If you take, and I'll do a little example here. Just do this on the Stonehenge. You can press hard on a pencil and you can lighten it up. So for instance, if I took this color and I started off really hard, that just goes on there so nice and smooth. But look how I'm lifting up my pressure. You see how I'm doing that? I'm lifting up my pencil and putting less pressure. That's going to be key in how you layer. So if I come in with my yellow, I'm starting off hard, and then I'm coming in lighter and lighter. Lighter pressure. Part of the layering is just going back and forth over things. Also, some things that I use lots of times are with doing cross hatching. So sometimes you will take strokes going this way, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to go over that layer, but I'm going to go the other direction. That's kind of like cross hatching, so that it doesn't look everything is going in the same direction. Okay, so we'll finish up that one. Okay, then here's a tip. Here's something I'm going to come in and show you. If you have either a blender marker, this one is a blender, it's by Chart Pack, or you can use rubbing alcohol, which I don't have it at my table right now, or you can use odorless mineral spirits. You can take just a dab of any of this, and if you have your drawing and you really want to do some blending here, you see how that almost turns it into a watercolory effect. I can do some blending. That's using this blender pen, but like I said, I can use Gamsol, I can use rubbing alcohol, should work too. Don't use any kind of oil-based material, but any of those three would work with the oil pencils with the binder or the wax. Now, let's move on to one more thing, and that is the final one, patience. I've done drawings where I look and I say, oh my gosh, that is horrible. Patience. You come back in, you keep lightly adding. And with that comes a finished product that most people, I think you'll like. But if you go in with just the thought of, I can do this real fast, and you're wanting to do something realistic, it may not work that way. It means you need to do layering and you need to have patience. In doing so, let me show you an eraser, a type of an eraser that you can use. This is a kneaded eraser. Or, and I don't think I have another one here. The white type erasers are good too, but this is good because it doesn't have crumbs, and you can usually come in here and, let me just do a quick mark here with this is Prismacolor. I could come in here and probably do some erasing with that. I can pick some of that up. That kind of helps pick some of it up. Now, granted, colored pencils don't erase as easily as your graphite does, but at least this is one way that you can touch it up and you can get some erasure with this type of kneaded eraser. The other thing is, if you want to sharpen your pencils, I always use just a small sharpener, just a little handheld sharpener. If I go to the big electric sharpener, 9 times out of 10 my lead breaks and I'm frustrated. So one of these works. You can take some sandpaper if you're trying to get your tip to be really good. You can come in and do some sandpaper to get a sharper tip. You can also come in and use an X-Acto blade, which is really good. I can come in very carefully and go like this and peel some of that wood off and get down to the pencil without breaking the lead. So that's one thing I'm going to caution you about. Make sure that you are careful in sharpening the pencils so that you can get the most out of them. On our first exercise, let's start with finding out what colors these pencils are. And I'm going to use the Faber-Castell brand. I bought the whole set. And so what I'm going to do is make a little diagram for myself going from left to right where I'm just designating what color they are. Because sometimes you'll see different color reds or different color yellows, and you don't know exactly what they're going to look like on the paper. So this can be a handy guide. Primarily, though, I'm looking and thinking, if you don't have to have all of these colors. They're great. But if you had just a primary red, I'm going to pick this one that is, what is this? This is a deep scarlet red. It looks like a primary red. I could pick any of these blues. I think I'm going to go with the phthalo blue. And then I think I'm going to go with cadmium yellow. So these are your three primary colors. And what I want you to do on paper is to make a little chart so that you're practicing blending these. You're going to blend primary colors to make secondary. And so to start with, we're going to start with, like you can start with a red. And I'm just going to, remember how I did before, how I really lifted up my pencil. And I'm going to come in with yellow because red and yellow make orange. I'm going to start out here. I'm pressing harder. Now what I usually do is start with a light one first. This time I was starting with red, and I probably should have started with the lighter color first. But I can still make this work. And remember, it's a whole thing of doing a little cross-hatching maybe. And lifting up your pressure. So you want to keep doing this. I'm going to keep working on this one to make sure that I've blended and I'm getting a nice orange in the middle by mixing those two. I still got some more blending to do there. Then I'm going to come in with, I'll start with yellow this time. I'm going to mix this with the blue. And on this paper, by the way, I pulled out a different paper that I didn't mention before. And I'll show that to you here in a second. This has a little more, this paper has a little more tooth to it. So I'll come back in, that's starting to turn green. I'll do that one. Let me show you the paper. Remember I was talking about mixed media paper, the Strathmore. This is also a mixed media paper. It's called Fabriano, and 108-pound dry and wet techniques. It's a real good, just standard paper, and I thought I would try that on these charts that I'm making. Then on this one, come in with, let's start with blue here. And start down here on the other side with red, because red and blue should make purple. So I'm going to keep working my way on all of these. I'm going to keep working my way in and adding more on top. You might try it with different shades of the reds and blues, because they're going to, red, blue, and yellow, they're going to be different. If I had used this lighter one, that might have come out a bit differently. This is a cooler yellow. This is a warmer yellow. So we'll see what happens with this. I'm going to finish this and I'll come right back. Let's take a look at how to make tints and shades with colors. And by that, I mean changing the value or the color of a particular color by adding white or black to it. And it'll change the value. And as we know, if I wanted to make a pink and I wanted to add red and white, that's going to change the value of the red, but it turns to pink. And so the way you start with this is the same thing of layering. If I took my if you can see here, my red, and I said, oh, I'm just gonna really, really color this a heavy red. Then I'm gonna come in and add white on top of this. Well, it doesn't change it much, and the reason is because there's nothing for the white to attach to. You've covered up all the texture of the paper, and you saturated the paper with that red, and so you can't really absorb the white to change the color. So instead of doing it that way, come in with your layers, like these, just a light layer that we've talked about with red. Then I can come on top of that, and I can start adding layers of white. And you see how it'll mix that way, and you can keep layering it and create that pink that you might want. It's the same way with if you take the red, and once again in tints and shades, I'm creating value changes, but I'm also changing the color. So let's say I want to add a black to that. So if I took red and added black to it, it's going to turn it into a more, maybe a maroon color, a dark red, a burgundy. But it's a darker value of red, is what I'm trying to say here. And by layering it, I can keep darkening or lightening the color. I wanted to show you the difference between doing this on the slick Bristol. You can see how it just goes on very smooth on the paper. And let me hold that so you can see it. And it blends pretty well. Then on the mixed media paper, it's got more tooth and you can see grain. But I want to show you another tip. Remember earlier I said you could kind of blend colors with the blending marker, or with alcohol, or with odorless mineral spirits. But you can also, since these pencils have oil in them, or the Prismacolor has wax in them, you can actually come in here and take like a soft, this is like a t-shirt, and you can do some blending by just smudging. This is actually called burnishing, where you're pressing down the paper fibers and you're blending the colors. What I want to encourage you to do is, if you get some colored pencils, play with them before you sit down and say, oh, I'm going to do get my paper perfect and just ready, and I'm going to do a wonderful drawing. Make sure you know what your pencils do. This is the Faber-Castell. I may go to the Prismacolor and see what that's going to do on this paper before I decide what paper I'm going to use to draw on. So I've kind of decided that even though I like the buttery feel of putting the colored pencil on the Bristol paper, I think I want to do more layering, and I'm afraid that the colored pencil is going to just sit on the surface and I won't be able to get a lot of depth in the drawing. So I'm going to forego that. I'm not going to use Bristol paper. I decided to come in with some, this is a Stonehenge. It's a cotton paper, and it is tinted. So remember I had the My Tints. I might try that. And then this was the Stonehenge that was tinted. And then I just snapped some pictures. Here's a image of a pear. I'm trying to get kind of simple. Here's one of an apple. I didn't want to get too complicated, but let's go with the pear. And the first thing I'm going to do on this is sketch out the shape. But if you do this with graphite pencil and then you try to go over it with colored pencil, the graphite can be a shiny, slick surface, and it won't take the color and mix with colored pencils very well. So I'm going to start out just sketching it in white or the light yellow. And then I'm looking and saying, well, that's a light spot. So everything I'm going to start doing is kind of acknowledging where the lights are. I'm going to just put right here some white on there. So I know that I'm going to kind of avoid that when I start coloring in. Then I'm going to need to figure out what colors do I want to use for this. And remember, I made a scale. This was my scale with all the different colors. I'm looking and thinking, well, yeah, it's a pear and it's green, but I want to make layers. I want to make my own greens. I don't want to just come in here and say, oh, okay, I'm going to color this green, this bright green. I don't think that matches very well. I may be able to come in and start with some yellows, a couple yellows here. I'm seeing on this side, there's the shadow. And I almost see that it has a warmth to it. Green is a cool color, but this almost has a warmth to it. Like maybe I could come in here with a little bit of that red and get some warmth over there. I see some warmth over here too. Then I'm thinking, well, yellow needs to have some kind of blue in here to make it that green. So I'm just gonna start with this, with these four colors. Now I may come in later. I think this is a nice green, an olive green. So I may come in and use some of that. I'm also looking at the stem, and the stem could have some of the browns, maybe a little black. So let me get started with this. I'm going to come in and show you how I'm going to do this, and I'll do a little bit on here, and then I'll come back and show you. So little by little, I'm adding layers, and I'm trying to, I don't have the shape exactly right, but I'm trying to look for the lights, and I'm trying to see where the green is warmer and more yellowy and has a little orange in it or red. There's a little reflected light over here, so I'm trying to put that in. Then it looks like a little more blue-green up there, so I'm going to add some of that, and then I'm going to come in and add the stem. So I didn't start off with, I've still got a lot of work to do on it, but I didn't start off with a real hard outline of dark. I started light, and I'm working towards dark. So let me do some more, and I'll be right back. Still working on it. I've got to find ways to, I will darken this up here, but I've got to find ways to pull that pear out from looking just flat. And one thing I'm noticing is I'm going to keep some of that color back here as part of the paper, but I think there's a different maybe distinction between the pear and what's back there, and it needs to be a line in there maybe. Need to darken up some areas and hopefully darken up some of this to make it pop forward. But as you can see, if I get close here, you can see that there are layers of color, and I'm not doing anything that is just pressing super hard. I'm coming in and just doing layers, and those layers are what's going to build this image. Here's another tip when layering. Don't rely too heavily on black for your shadows, because yes, I'm very lightly going on into some of this with a black, but if I look at shadows, I'm going to see some cool blues in there. This shadow over here is warm, has a warm color to it. Maybe I'll come in with a terracotta pencil, and I may go over it with black, but that's not my primary shadow color or my outline color. Come at the last minute with black, and then just do some some going over it lightly in order to use that. This is where I've ended up with my pear. I know there's always more I can do, but for now I've come to a stopping point. Here's another blending technique using Gamsol odorless mineral spirits. This creates kind of a painterly effect with your colored pencils and the layers that you've created. You can also use rubbing alcohol, but I'm using the mineral spirits this time. So I'm going to take just a brush. This is a drawing I never finished, but I had started with a flower. And if you can look at it, you can see that, you know, it's getting there, but I'm doing layers, but it's kind of greeny. So let's try and see what would happen if I take a little bit of this odorless mineral spirits, and I don't want to put too much. I'm going to wet my brush, and I'm going to see if I can blend this. This works only if you've got lots of layers. So if you put one little thin layer and try to do this, it's not going to do much. But do you see how that's really blending it? And it's kind of getting a bit of a painterly. And if I get the wrong color on there, I can take this and wipe the brush off a bit. You don't want to pool and put tons and tons of this on there, because that won't necessarily work. But just a little. And I'm kind of liking this effect. I don't know if you can see that right there, how it's starting to get rid of some of the marks and blend the colors together, and it's coming out almost like a painterly technique. Now, I'll work on this some more and come back and show you, but when you do this, you need to let the paper dry. You don't want to come in with pencil on top of the solvent until the paper is totally dried. Then you can come in and you can actually add other colors. You can add maybe I want to put some more white in here, some really light pink. I can do that once this paper is dried. Here's the flower that I was working on. I've worked on it some, but I haven't got it totally finished. Do you remember how I was taking the brush with some Gamsol, and I was putting some Gamsol on here and trying to make it painterly? I could tell that this paper was still wet because I looked on the back side and you could see the solvent coming through. So I waited next day until that was totally dry. Now I can come in and I can actually do some more coloring on top of this. And I can do more blending. I can keep doing more of this. I still see a texture in my colors and kind of a graininess. This may be something you totally want to get rid of. It may be something that you really like. It's okay. If you like having a graininess, that's fine. I think I'm still going to work on this and see if I can get it even more flat and add some colors in here on top of me putting the Gamsol on it. So that may be kind of fun to do that. And at some point this drawing will be finished. I'm not sure when. Right now I'm just kind of enjoying the coloring and working on the piece as it is. Let's talk a little bit about drawing people and skin tones, skin colors. When I was a child, it used to kind of drive me nuts that in the box of crayons there was a color that was my color skin, and it said this is flesh tone. It's like, no, it's not. There's Caucasian. There's people that are Caucasian that have pink undertones, yellow undertones. I'm just grabbing stuff out of the younger people, the peachy undertones. I'm looking at African Americans that she's got very dark skin, and like, what are the colors in there? There's an undertone of, on some of the shadows, maybe some blue. There's an undertone of a warm, coffee-like color. So many different ethnicities and people with their skin tones. So you're not going to find, I guess I'm saying this because you're not going to find a pencil that says flesh tone, this is it. You've got to make your own. And the way I start with this is I always start with the lightest, everything that's the lightest. I may start with this one and say, you know, it's maybe some of these light peachy, has a little yellow, a little peachy, a little red in there. I keep doing layers, this is something that with maybe a darker skin tone, I actually was putting layers of blue and burgundy and brown and black. So layering, but starting with the lightest undertone and then building on top of that. If you look at some of Renoir's paintings, he put a lot of, in the shadows, he would have green, or he'd have some color that people would say, well, that's not a flesh tone. People questioned it back then, but it's really beautiful. So I'm not going to start a big painting here, a big drawing of a face, but I want you to think about how you can layer, what you can put on here to create skin tones. I'm also going to talk about hair. If you're wanting to draw a pet or you're wanting to draw a person, and I think it would be hilarious. This is just in a magazine. I think it was a Leewood magazine. I don't know this person. But if I look at her hair, I'm wanting to see, let's see if I can. She has a shape. Like if you're wanting to draw this hair, think about this as, you know, around her face, there's a shape. There are shapes that are going around her face, and the curls. And one of the things that you want to do is find the lightest tone that you can, the lightest color, and start kind of laying in some of that. Maybe some of the yellow color. You may start laying that in. You may come in with a peachy color, but once again, it's the layering. As we start building to the darker tones, I'll work on this and then come back, but after we start building to the darker tones, you can come in with some darker shades of, gosh, maybe that's I just see kind of an orangey burgundy colors in there. Maybe that's a cooler blues and greens, and we'll start adding that in there and see if we can get actual, to make it look like actual hair. So start off simply with a block of a shape, then come in, add the lights, start adding the darks, and start figuring out how you can accentuate some of the light areas and the dark strokes to make it look like real hair. Let's take a look at how some of the hair that I was working on turned out. I want to get this close enough so that you can see it. I have not done any blending as far as burnishing or a colorless pencil. And with oil-based, the Faber-Castell, which is oil-based, I'm better off either burnishing with, like I showed you the little cloth I had, or using a blending stump to come in and do some burnishing. Or using some of the Gamsol to come in and burnish. But if you can see, I put lots of colors in that hair. Hair is not just one color. I put blues and reds and yellows, and I still need to do something to pull it all together and not have the texture of the paper showing quite as much. But I kind of like it. I'm starting to like that a little bit because you can see the light is showing. There's some dark parts in the hair. So this was just the outcome of what I was doing. I also want to give a shout out to the abstract art, because when you look at the things I've shown you so far for colored pencils has been how to draw something realistic, which is wonderful. I mean, colored pencils are a wonderful tool for that. But I drew this little abstract circular spiral design in my sketchbook some time ago, and I want to come in and do some coloring in here. I can do that with colored pencils. I may want to lay totally flat color in some areas. I may want to do some blending to make it appear that these areas have a curve to them. But if I wanted to come in and do something flat, colored pencils are wonderful for that. So don't feel like, you know, you're kind of not using colored pencils correctly if you use flat color. You may be doing some abstract designs and patterns. These are a wonderful tool for coloring in those areas. Let's do a little review on some of the products and things that I've talked about and used in this video. Maybe after watching the entire video, you're getting a little confused. So I want to outline some of these things for you. First of all, the pencils I use, and I mentioned a lot about, was the Faber-Castell Polychromos. And these are, if you can see that, these are oil-based binder. And that's a little more rare when it comes to colored pencils. But one of the benefits is that there's really less breakage, and they hold a sharper point. The longer time they have the sharper point. And there's also the issue of light fastness, because if you have your drawings in the light or they're framed and hanging up or something, I have read, and I've not experienced this, but I've read that the Faber-Castell, the oil-based ones, hold the color longer. Then we've got Prismacolor. I had some Prismacolor Premier. There are different types of Prismacolor pencils, but the difference is they're wax-based. They have great color choices and intensity of colors, but because of the wax-based part, there is a little more breakage. Maybe the point is dull and it's hard to keep a sharp point, but it does have a blending pencil that you can purchase that goes with this. So we were earlier doing some blending. The Prismacolor, you can actually buy the pencil, whereas with the Faber-Castell, with the oil-based, I was using the marker, a blender marker. I was using Gamsol, and then also some burnishing. Then there was also, I had mentioned Derwent. Derwent is a brand, and I was showing you the Derwent watercolor colored pencils. You can buy these in regular colored pencils. They're wax-based also, and it's a good brand, but I just didn't use it in this video. The other thing was, let's talk about paper. Bristol paper was had a much smoother surface without any tooth or texture to it. That's really neat when you're applying the pencil. It just feels buttery smooth. But the downside is that you can't get a lot of layers to adhere to the paper because there's just not enough texture to grab the pencil. The other was Stonehenge. Stonehenge comes in pads or sheets, however you want to buy it. It comes in different colors. It's 100% cotton. It's a really nice paper. Has a nice kind of a medium texture to it. And it's primarily used as a printmaking paper, but it's great for drawing also. The other one was My Tints, and I forgot to put this on here. We're going to say Canson is the brand. This is a paper that is a little smoother on one side and has a little bit of a texture on the other. It's great for colored pencils or pastels. The other type of paper was Strathmore. I used, and what I've got here, this paper here is the 400 series, which is just a really nice drawing paper for pencils or colored pencils. And it comes in mixed media, there's charcoal papers, all kinds of Strathmore products that you can find. If you're going to use watercolor paper, I would suggest getting cold press because it's going to be less texture. Watercolor paper, you know, is meant for obviously watercolors, and it does have more texture to it. The hot press would be way too much texture for your pencil to even hold up to, but cold press would probably work. And the last item was that we talked about was blending, when you're wanting to blend your pencils. With the oil-based, the Faber-Castell, I use the Gamsol, rubbing alcohol works, or the blender markers, and also burnishing. I think I used some of these burnishing tools, or a cloth. And like I mentioned before, with the Prismacolor, you can get a clear blending pencil because it's wax-based. So I hope that just is kind of a good overview of what we've talked about and some of the products I've used. I hope you've enjoyed this video and learned some techniques and tips on using colored pencils. So right now, grab your pencils and go have fun creating.